not being ungrateful again, but I think the neighborhood services general is the most applicable way for us to try to generate someone that's interested in buying this property. Because my wife and I plan on living there, and we want something nice to go in there. Like, we don't have any control once the property's sold, but I do have some control over who buys it and what they're going to put in there. If I'm going to live there, I certainly want something there that's going to look nice and be nice. So, being a little bit redundant here, but I want to follow up by saying I really would appreciate your vote regarding neighborhood service in general. I would I just know it's the right way to go, and I would really appreciate your vote regarding that particular zone. And I just want to say thank you very much for your time and everything, for listening to me and everything. I do have my realtor here, Mr. Rick Shelton, that can say a few words regarding. He's followed me along quite a way through this path, and he will like to say a few things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Williams. I'm Rick Shelton. I'm with Coldwell Banker, have been representing Mr. Jones for several years in the sale of his property. And but previously, I was a landscape architect, and I assisted him before I became his realtor in generating concepts for ideas and how to prepare this property for a market condition. Its location is in a corridor of no commercial development, as staff pointed out. There's a long distance between commercial nodes, Joyce and Mission. That's 2.4 miles. And so there's a lot of development in properties in that distance, but none of them have walkable access to services of any kind. Anybody who needs to get anything or get any service provided must get in their car and load that street. So this provides a potential for an opportunity to have small, traditional neighborhood-style village services. I think the recommendation for 8,000 square feet is actually a sensible one in this case, because buildings of a more substantial size can house multiple businesses, multiple shops, multiple professional offices, while having several residences above, meeting the sort of live-work style that traditional neighborhood development seeks, and greater opportunity for attainable housing as well. Smaller footprints overall for the total business area, reduces impermeable surfaces, and expands the amount of additional space left around those buildings for pedestrian gathering. So those are the reasons that we felt like that Mr. Jones felt that it would be advantageous to agree with the Planning Commission on their increase to the general category. And so I just wanted to conclude with the application of neighborhood services in this location to provide a pedestrian accessible node of small village-like services. I think it's suitable for all the surrounding neighborhoods there, as those neighborhoods have a minimum of 3/4 of a mile to walk to any other services. And if they're heading north to Joyce, it would be nearly 2 miles. So I'll leave you with that, and if I can answer any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay, let's get started here. What questions do we have from the council for the applicant or staff? Justin.
I have one actually for the real estate person and then staff, if I could.
Sure.
What is your professional opinion on this? I've been in contact with a lot of people, and some people have said there's plenty of open retail retail space up and down 265.
Mm.
This is not your only client. I'm sure that you've bought and sold lots of commercial property all up and down that side of the city. So my question would be, in your opinion, where are we with the availability of retail space up and down 265? Is there an abundance? Is there not enough? Is it close to enough? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two ways to think about it. There is an abundance, because there are plenty of commercial opportunities remaining at the Mission Exchange in that entire commercial node. Several for sale now, more that can come online in the future as land opens up or maybe prices get better. And at the Joyce node, there's a lot of commercial space, even some being developed now. But the second part of that is that there's a long distance between them. So applying the traditional neighborhood or the town theme to that means that there should be something in between that's walkable, something that allows all of those developments to have a place to go to get coffee, to get a book, to get, to meet with their accountant, whatever. That those walkability issues should be made available, or those opportunities should be made available, and they're not. So the core commercial areas have a lot of opportunity for further development. There are properties for sale in both, but nothing in between that's walkable for neighborhoods.
Thank you very much.
Did that answer your?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And for staff.
And then I have a question for staff. Jonathan mentioned, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were mentioning the wording in the city plan does allow for, I think you said, low intensity commercial. Was that what you?
That is correct, on corners and connecting corridors.
So, in your professional opinion, can you define what low intensity is? Is there a definition per se, or is it situational?
I think you're correct that it is situational in the matter of compatibility. Yeah, that would be my response to that.
Is it safe to assume that gray area there of what's low intensity and what's not part of the reason why city staff looked at neighborhood limited as a better fit as opposed to the planning commission neighborhood general? Was it based on that sort of intensity level?
Part of it was, again, about compatibility. It is a mostly residential area, and the uses and size of the buildings allowed in the NSL zoning district are more comparable to what's existing in the area and can be very complementary if developed under those zoning requirements.
Councilmember, I think the primary distinction between those two districts are the size of the buildings. The uses, both are mixed-use districts, both allow vertical mixed use, horizontal mixed use. But in our opinion, given the very attractive tree-covered parcel that has some depth to it, that is immediately adjacent to homes to the east, that the limited would really fit that parcel to a T in our mind. I thought it was an excellent district.
Is it normal, and just educate me because there's so many zonings and so many details on each zoning, to go from limited to general, if the biggest piece of that is building size, you're more than doubling. So there's no middle ground there. You see what I'm saying? You go from limited 3,000 to general 8,000. Seems like a big jump to someone like me who's just looking at it strictly in numbers. To go from a relatively small building of 3,000 to 8,000 seems like a big jump with just one zoning change.
I agree. Those are the two districts that we have available at this
Right.
point. But
Okay.
you certainly could make an argument for an in-between.
Yeah, I understand. Good, thank you very much.
Okay. What other questions do we have from the council? Okay. Let's take some public comment. Now, let's lay out the rules here before we get all carried away here. Everybody gets
Okay.
one turn to the microphone. There's 5-minute limit, okay?
I'll try not to take over 2.5
Well,
minutes.
I understand, Jay. Just hang on. And keep the comments to me and don't engage anybody on the council or out in the audience, okay? So give us your name, address, and, I guess we're ready to go. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm J.B. Hayes, a close neighbor, 2595 Firewood, immediately to the north and east of this. The other property is zoned RO immediately north of this. And I understand the close neighbors behind and immediately to the north do not object to this. And I do not have any objections. I think this would be the best way for it to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Henry. I live at 2885 East Township. I represent my family in a small group of houses in Edenbrook. I feel for Mr. Jones. I understand his arguments and request for zoning, but I disagree with the proposal. I have issues with the compatibility. I present some public opposition to the logic in a reasonable fashion. There are issues with traffic and safety, congestion. I believe that a domino effect will decrease adjoining land values. The city does not warrant spot zoning. This rezone is not consistent with the city plan of 2030. City of Fayetteville invested a lot of time and money in the 2030 plan. That vision is residential for this area. It is close to schools, houses, church, and parks. It's not a walkable area. It is not walkable. This is not, this road 265 and crossover is a high traffic, high speed area that is best avoided on foot. I've seen multiple accidents since the upgrade. I've narrowly avoided being injured myself from people disregarding the traffic signals. This area has lots of people in and out of the area with school drop-offs, pickups, and homes. One stoplight to the south, we have multiple areas to shop, eat, trade with dentists, fitness centers, arts, banks, as well as dry cleaners. I'm concerned that if you allow this zoning change, it will have a domino effect that will creep back to the corner where there's a 2-acre lot that would go C1. Seems logical. At the Planning Commission meeting, there were several disparate ideas. Concern for the 2030 plan and safety were the primary concerns. Multiple people were concerned about the safety if this is a residential area because of the previously mentioned speed and traffic. So the next step was to go to office, anywhere between 1,000 and 8,000 square feet. So traffic is a concern for 6 lots, but if you put a business on it, it's not a concern. I run business here in Fayetteville. It depends on traffic, lots of traffic, and that is safe and accessible. Do we need more office space? Increasing the traffic is not logical. What seems logical is to keep this residential. Several of the property owners immediately adjacent to this property were against the proposed zone change 2 years ago. They are not here tonight because they have some significant health issues. Mr. Jones had indicated in the previous meeting that they supported the change, and I've gotten indication that Dr. Reynolds and his son are not for it. One last issue that I have is he says no one has made an offer, and I did the search on what the property values listed. Covington and Candlewood, 2 local areas of development, started at 20, 30, maybe 60,000 an acre. But Mr. Jones had started at 145. So I believe that I feel bad at wanting to say no, but logically this request should be not developed or passed. This is not a plan, it's just a change. Thank you.
Yep,
I have a
hang on.
question.
Justin.
Mr. Henry, can I just ask one quick question? Because I don't want to assume things. So before us tonight, we've got a neighborhood general zoning request where city staff has talked about neighborhood limited. Are you saying you're against both of those, or is one better than the other in your opinion?
It's not a walkable area. And the inference that this would be a safe area to walk in, and in the Planning Commission, they said they wouldn't walk in the area of 265 in Mission. And the traffic has light, it's well regulated, and they obey the signals there. But they run this red light going south to north all the time. And increasing the traffic count in that area, I think, is an illogical conclusion.
Yeah.
And I have some ideas on what would make a better plan, and I mentioned that there's some life changes that have occurred in these other property owners. And I think going forward, if that was all residential, it could be put together, but I just don't think it's a good plan.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, Sarah.
I withdraw.
Okay. Okay, John.
Mr. Henry, I just want to point, I won't quite let you sit down yet. Sunday before last, I walked on 265 on Crossover Road from Mission to Joyce Street. And for you to say it's not walkable, I'm sorry, I just did it a week and a half ago.
I don't disagree, I said
There are
it's not
sidewalks
safe.
all up and down.
It is, but I avoid it with my children and my dog because the rate of traffic. I don't know what's coming out of the back of the trucks. So it's an unsafe walkable area. And to do a city services or I've seen good walkable spaces where they design the space and then the houses around it. But you didn't have 70, 50 mile-an-hour cars passing that area. And prior to prior council meeting, so I say it's unsafe.
If we
I
have cars
children.
going 70 miles an hour, our police need to address that issue.
No doubt. But
Okay.
I said, my neighbor was almost killed because of someone blowing through that stoplight. That's a separate issue.
Sure.
But it's unsafe. That's my contention.
Thank you.
Okay. Who else would like to address us?
Mayor Jordan, my name is Kathy Wade. I live at 2863 East Township Street, next door to Paul Henry. I echo the things that Paul said. I would like to be a little more specific about the traffic concerns that we have about putting a business on that property. Because of the median on Crossover, there isn't a way for people traveling south on Crossover to turn into that. They would have to go to the intersection of Township and either make a U-turn, which I don't think was designed to do that, or it would be, they would turn into Township, and then Edenbrook has a private driveway and people that goes in and out, and people would quickly discover that they could cut through our private driveway that we would then have to maintain. So I have a concern about that people would use that as a turnaround in order to get back going north on Crossover. Or they would subsequently use Candlewood's Street as a cut-through, which I don't think that the residents of Candlewood would be very excited about either. So I think that the planning for Crossover to be an arterial road doesn't allow for easy access for a business or multifamily units at that piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address us? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. And so, who would like to be first? Justin?
Well, Mayor and Council, I would ask respectfully that we would hold it here tonight for multiple reasons. This is a very different piece of property as it's been the last several times that it came up. It's created a lot of conversation, and it's created a lot of things that I have been involved with. I'll let Councilmember Bunch, my fellow 3 representative, speak if she wants to. But what I did was I've sent multiple questions to city staff. Many of them have been answered, but I do have some more that I would like to get addressed over the coming days. There's a difference of opinion between city staff and planning commission, and I think that alone should give us some pause in what we're doing here, because I think there's different reasons for that, and I still don't think I understand them enough to make a decision tonight. I contacted Devin Howland, our Director of Economic Vitality, asking him questions around the need, if there is a need that exists for retail in that specific area and all along that area. We can all have opinions on is there too many, is there not enough, is there the right kind, and all those sort of things. But I'd really like someone that specializes in economic development to answer that question. On initial reaction, he also mentioned talking to the Chamber of Commerce. I would like to reach out to Chung at the Chamber and get her opinion on this. I think getting the most opinions from professionals is important when we're making a decision like this. I I'm clear on what can and can't be built there. There's a lot of misinformation around, could it ever be, gas stations, 24-hour things, all these high-traffic, business, those kind of businesses need high traffic, and I just can't imagine anyone would want to invest there to put a high-traffic, need business there, because, again, the access is pretty limited. You do have to make a U-turn at that light, and I would even, suggest maybe me or someone, the city staff, contact the highway department and ask them if that turnaround is indeed defined as a turnaround, because I don't know if that's a definition, or if they built it for that. I know there's a U-turn down by the fire station at what is that, Old Wire and 265, that is built a little more differently than the one at Township. So you can see there's a lot of things there that I think need to be addressed, and I'm not guaranteeing that I can get all those addressed, or if anyone else has any questions, everything can be done by the next meeting, but I can absolutely tell you that I don't think they've all been addressed tonight to make an informed decision, at least for me. So that's just my opinion, but I would ask that we leave it here at least until the next meeting, so that we can get some of the other questions answered.
Okay, we'll, check with the highway department on, cut through there. I know Chris and I have taken, Chris, you might wanna, I know we've taken a couple of those to the highway department, and they have not been, well, supportive of any sort of cuts in there. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they've changed their mind.
Yeah, if you'd like an answer about the U-turns, all the intersections are designed for U-turns. We specifically had to change the ordinance to allow U-turns at signalized intersections, but those kind of weird bulb out,
Yeah.
widening areas around the intersections are designed for, basically any large vehicle. I think it's designed for buses, is about the largest vehicle that could make a U-turn at those locations, but
Okay.
they are designed for U-turns.
Okay, Chris, since you brought it up, I was about to ask it, is there any differences in that, the way that was built, was it in consideration of the nearby schools, you think? You mentioned buses. Do they take into consideration, in your opinion, the kind of traffic that's gonna be going both east, I mean, they come from all angles out of Township from the Vandergrift, McNair areas?
I would say they probably didn't get into that level of detail of looking at that detailed traffic stream. They pick a design vehicle, and, that was the size vehicle that, they could reasonably design to allow for the U-turns.
Okay. Well, there is a significant traffic increase there around 8 and 3 every day. I drive it every single day, multiple times, so I know very, very well that. But, again, I'd never really examined the turnaround area there, so I didn't know if there were differences in how those are built. But it sounds like that one was built so you could make a turnaround.
Correct.
To then go from south to north.
Right, yep. All of the intersections up and down crossover, in the median section are designed that way.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I assume we're gonna leave this on the first. I'm sorry, Sarah, you had something you about to push the button. Okay.
I agree with Mr. Tennant that, I'd like to see this held,
Okay.
till the next, meeting. And I have, when I look at this, I consider it from a couple of different perspectives, and it is true that we have, we have quite a lot of, someone had sent me a letter, I forgot who it was, that said, we've got 250 vacant commercial units around Fayetteville. Well, I just did a real quick search earlier today, and I didn't come up with that many, but I only searched one outlet. But that doesn't take into consideration the types of properties that are available, and some of the properties that might have been commercial properties in technically Fayetteville city limits, some of them were actually in Greenland and Elkins and Farmington, and they weren't right in the center of the east side of town. So that is something I look at, that I think there's possibly still more room for some commercial over there. And we also do not have the type of development that could be put on this property that would allow living above the commercial. I don't think there's anything like that I'd have to really rack my brains to see if there's anything quite like that around Mission. There might be some around Joyce, but, you know, again, that's something I consider that, you know, I think about, the type of development that would go in there. But I have real concerns with the safety and the access to the property. So, for those reasons alone, I think I'd like to see this tabled as well.
Well, we're gonna hold it, it'll be 2 weeks before it comes back anyway, if you wanna hold it on the first reading.
Let's hold it on the first one.
All right. Everybody okay with that? All right, so we leave that one right there. Okay, number 9. A resolution expresses city council support for an updated city plan 2030. Garner, I believe you have this, or someone?
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, this project was originally scheduled for 2017, and for various reasons, including staff changes, was held until 2018. I thought I'd give you a little bit of background about comprehensive planning and the process, and some thoughts that we've discussed with the Planning Commission for this update. I also wanted to show some alternatives to the 71B corridor study that respond to some issues that were surfaced at the agenda session last week. Well, this thing's not going. There we go. Quickly, comprehensive planning looks at the entire city, the future of the entire city. It's a long-range document. All good comprehensive plans should tell the community, work with the community to answer the question, where are we going? And more recently, the second question is relevant. We don't like to create shelf plans. So how we get there, what steps are needed, and how we measure progress is a critical part of a comprehensive plan. The Fayetteville's growing and changing, and an update is certainly advisable periodically, as Fayetteville has wisely done, to make sure that the document is current and usable, but also to involve today's decision makers. Some of you are on the council when the last update was done. Some of the planning commissioners were on also, but some are new. And certainly the public need to be given an opportunity to get involved in the future of Fayetteville. So the process itself sometimes is as important as the plan that it produces. A bit of an overstatement. Dwight Eisenhower said, "Plans are nothing, planning is everything." History of comprehensive planning in Fayetteville. General plan was done in '70, and the plans have been updated through the years, various times. I'm told that there was a council retreat in 2004, and the council decided that we needed to take a fresh look at the future of Fayetteville and launched the effort that created City Plan 2025.
Yes.
That plan is a paradigm shift in terms of growth and development policy. The 6 goals are behind you. I don't need to belabor those, but the plan also has benchmarks and timelines were identified. It has a future land use map, master street plan and street cross sections, and it has general policies to guide annexation. The plan was last updated in 2011. Minor changes were made to goal number 6, and some additional benchmarks were added, and amendments were made to the future land use map, master street plan, and the street cross sections. I won't go these in any detail, but we've talked to the Planning Commission. We've heard from various members of the community, and we keep hearing the idea that We need to define the term appropriate infill and suburban sprawl. And we need to use that definition and public input to create a growth concept map that might illustrate where you would consider expanding the city or not expanding the city, as well as what we mean by appropriate infill and creating a targeted infill map. Lots of topic area specific plans have been completed, and we would look at updating those. We would do all the usual stuff that was done in 2011, as well as update the charts and maps with current data. So coming to the college corridor plan, there is a budget rollover, not a large amount, to pay for consultant services for this update. Many of the work products that were identified looked like they lend themselves to internal staff work. So we are recommending that money be used to pay for the corridor plan. Last week's proposal that I presented was that plan should be from North Street to the northern city limits. And since that, the mayor has recommended that we add the southern Cato Springs to Prairie Street. And I talked yesterday with Councilmember Marsh and also today. And Councilmember Marsh is suggesting that we also add the part in green, which is from Prairie Street to Rock, the Archibald Yell diagonal cutoff to this study. I think it's important to recognize it's a little bit different than the other blue parts because, first of all, it's a diagonal cutoff. It's also being addressed in the mobility plan that's almost finished, that's coming to you shortly. And much of the engineering background work has been done on that section, as well as some proposed street cross sections have been produced. And certainly Chris Brown can answer any questions about that if you have questions about that. So at this point, I'd like to give Councilmember Marsh a chance to, she suggested the green part.
Well, let me throw something in there. The reason I didn't put that particular in, I sent a plan similar to this to the Transportation Committee. It's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, which they felt that we needed to continue north first. But and the reason I had not included the Archibald Yell is that Nelson Nygaard has this on their transportation plan. But if you want to put that in there, that's fine too. I'm not wrapped around the axle one way or the other on that.
Well, I did a little bit of research into our planning history, and in the Fayetteville Vision 2020 plan, which was completed in 2004, goal number 5 was a revitalized South Fayetteville. In the Downtown Master Plan that was also completed in 2004, it listed as, under immediate projects, redesign of Archibald Yell Boulevard. It also listed in our generation, redevelopment and infill along Archibald Yell. If you look back at the Walker Park Master Plan from 2008, it designates that we should complete the South School Avenue corridor, with develop it with appropriate infill along the corridor to transform it into a destination that contributes to the vibrancy of downtown and the fabric of Walker Park neighborhood. If you look at the amount of private investment that has gone into just Walker Park alone, because that's where I could find statistics, in the last 10 years, just on single-family homes, we've had over $12 million in new construction and $1.8 million in renovation. And that does not include any of the apartment complexes like Hill Place or the Grove, nor does that calculate the almost 300 homes under construction by Roush Coleman in that neighborhood right now, and the anticipated 80 homes at Willow Bend, approximately 80, and the relocation of public housing down there. Recently, the Innovation Council, in their efforts to help us become the startup city of the South, reiterated the importance of connecting the square to the Arkansas Research and Technology Park down on Cato Springs Road. You know, this is the gateway to our city from the south. It is the gateway to our Commerce District, to the Research and Technology Park. It's a vital corridor between the new U of A Arts and Design District and the city's new arts corridor. and it connects Jennings Addition to Washington Elementary School. So, with that in mind, I think that we absolutely need to move forward on including Archibald Yale Boulevard.
I've got it, I mean, and, I wanted to be sure y'all are okay with that before I put that in there. The old plan that I had sent to the Transportation Committee, I don't know, it's been 5 or 6 years ago, recommended going south, but the advice given to me was to go north first and then come back south. But being that we're doing the study on the whole thing, I told Garner to go ahead and include the area at least from MLK to Cato, but if you want to put Archibald Yale in there too, I know.
I mean, I think we've seen a lot of, we've seen recent petitions from the neighborhood. I mean, there is a need there. And a very dense residential area within walking distance of downtown.
So we'll put Archibald Yale in there, I assume, as well.
Okay, just so council knows, what the process is from here, assuming you add these extra segments, to your, resolution going forward, we would do an addendum to the RFP that is out on the street right now. It would add about 3 weeks to the process. It would also involve additional funding. We would write the addendum that's subject to the council's approval.
Right.
So the consultant teams would know that action is still pending. And then the contract, once the consultant team is selected, the contract is negotiated and it has to come back to the council for approval.
Yes, but I certainly want the council to approve those additions.
So, finally, those of us on the staff side, we're excited about doing this plan. We've recruited a talented team that involves communications, community resources, development services, planning, engineering, sustainability, and resilience. We have an ambitious work plan to get it done quickly. We're already working on ideas for public outreach. We plan to use some of the innovative methods that were used with the Energy Action Plan. We then would come back to you with that result. So we would check back with you after the public outreach phase. We would check back with you with a draft plan. And then finally, the last phase is the formal adoption process through the Planning Commission and Council. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What do you all think? Okay, John.
You asked what I think, so I'll tell you.
Sure, John.
I'm encouraged by the plan. I think we're moving forward. To those, Council Member Marsh and Council Member Gray, I'm excited about the development I see in South Fayetteville. I